Lauren Venables is a feminine embodiment and intimacy coach who helps high-achieving women feel safe enough to finally drop their guard and receive the intimacy, pleasure, and devotion they deeply crave. Through somatic practices, nervous system safe transformations, and trauma-informed coaching, she guides women who are brilliant in their careers but guarded in love to soften, open, and become the sensual, cherished, wild, and alive women they long to be. From based in Sydney, Australia, Lauren's work weaves grief, embodiment, and relational healing into a path back to feeling juicy, present, and deeply connected, first with yourself and then with the people you love. There's a lot there. Thank you so much for joining. I've really enjoyed our conversation already before I hit record, so people don't get to listen to that. But yeah, I've got a lot of questions. So I'm just going to dive in if that's okay.
Absolutely. Really excited to be here.
The first one I wanted to ask was just to take you back a little bit, and just to understand perhaps what you were like in your formative years. Would the person you are today surprise your 14-year-old self and surprise the people that knew you when you were that 14-year-old Lauren?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yeah. I going back that far, and even to be honest, really, like, let's say 10 years ago, 5, 10 years ago, I was the girl. When I was much younger, I was the shy, introverted girl at the back of the room that was afraid to put up her hand in case she got anything wrong. I was the girl who didn't have a sense of like self-expression, really. I really struggled to, like, I grew up as a dancer, so on stage I couldn't see all of the faces, so it was very performative, and it was like I can be seen and showy, but yet in close relationships that absolutely wasn't the case. And so as I continued to grow up, I felt very shy, and I that showed up in relationships, in intimacy, in my own sexual expression, if we're going down that route as well. I didn't grow up in a household that spoke about any of that, and so I wasn't the, I guess, extroverted woman that I am today, that's for sure. People and myself would be very, very shocked as to who I've become versus who I was.
So when you go back to your school reunions, people sort of head snap around, like, who the hell's that?
Absolutely. Like, people often say to me, because I've been on social media for years, and who was, following me in the very beginning when I first started sharing really vulnerably, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And they thought, what the hell is she doing, to now who I am now? They're like, oh my gosh, you have just evolved so much. And I continue to, because I'm a woman and I believe
Yeah.
that's what we do. So, yeah.
It's interesting, this thing. You sort of, as an outsider, you would sort of think, oh gosh, a dancer, they're going to be incredibly comfortable with their body. They're, quick changes backstage. They're very comfortable. They know what their body can do almost as a tool to dance, I guess. So why do you think you perhaps didn't almost feel yourself in your body, if that makes sense?
Yeah. I was always needing to get everything right. I even had dance teachers like scream at me from across the room, Lauren, get out of your head, like get into your body, because I was so
Yeah.
needing to get it right, and I wanted to make it look perfect. And so on the outskirts and on stage, and when I needed to perform, I was wearing a mask. But then in intimate relationships, or with my school friends, there was a lot of bullying when I was younger and whatnot, and I felt quite alone, and would go home to mum crying every night, and so I didn't feel safe around friendships. I didn't feel connected in that way. So I was very attached to my mum when I was younger as well, when I was a little girl. So I guess continued to like stay in that shell, because I was scared to be seen, essentially.
Yeah.
Mm.
One of the things you say in this site that I really liked was you talk about helping women feel safe to drop their guard down so they can experience intimacy, devotion that they desire and deserve. Do you think it's still the case that a lot of women do have a guard up about, and it's either seeking what they are looking for or accepting once they've found it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a lot of the women I work with, the way that their guard shows up is being the capable one, is being the one
Yeah.
who holds it all together, is being the one who doesn't need anyone else, because if she shows that she needs someone else, then she loses power. And that was definitely my story as well. And I think that even when a woman can get what she thinks she wants, sometimes hyper independent women that I work with, it's still so
Mm.
hard to let that guard down, to let, the walls that they've created, because it hasn't felt safe. Whereas generally it stems from childhood and what their relationships were like with their parents and how they navigated that, so that shows up in relationships and in intimacy, and how they actually receive love and devotion, and whether they do or not.
Because just talking as a man, because all I can talk
Mm-hmm.
about is that I guess that's the extra layer that I don't have to be concerned about in a way. So yes, I might have trouble dropping my guard from a mental or intimacy point of view, but I'm not concerned about safety. So I think I was wonder with the daughter or with the son with his girlfriend. It's almost like how do they sort of handle giving so much of themselves, really? Because if you are dropping your guard, yes, intimately and emotionally, etc., which is incredibly challenging to do, but also it's that ensuring you're in a situation that is safe and secure. And is that something that you talk to people about, the sort of safety aspect of things as well?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the biggest pieces of women learning how to discern a situation, whether it is safe or not,
Mhm.
to
Mm.
to drop their guard down. It is, yeah, one of the biggest pieces of my work, especially safety within the body, and how that shows up in intimacy, and discerning what our yes and what our no is, because most women don't actually know what their yes and no is, because they've come from a place of, if I speak to the clients I work with, a lot of women have um, identify with the good girl archetype of, overgiving and wanting to
Yeah.
please, so they don't know the difference between their yes and their no. So we create the safety within their body, and tune in to, okay, what actually feels like a yes in my body? Ooh, okay, no,
Mm.
what feels like a no? Okay, and then actually feeling comfortable and creating the safety per se to communicate that with somebody, if it is with a person within that moment.
Mm. And I think one thing that people might not realize, or maybe they do, and it's just me, that this is something that concerns all women. I talked to somebody the other day on the podcast, and she is very high flying. She's very professional. She earns a really good 6-figure salary, manages hundreds of people, develops a business, whatever. But she's found out over the course of time that she'd been in a coercive relationship for 10 years, and she said that she was, in her words, she was embarrassed a lot of the time to talk about it, because she felt that being this superwoman at work and leading this team and growing business and bringing in sales and bringing in revenue, etc., is how on earth did I get tricked into this relationship where I was increasingly isolated from my friends, cut off from my family, I was the only breadwinner in the house, bringing all the money, and eventually she broke away from it. But I do think sometimes perhaps people feel uncomfortable or embarrassed or nervous to talk about it. Like you said, this sort of, they're showing up as not the perfect version of themselves in all aspects of their life. And is that something you find when you deal with? So I know a lot of people you deal with are very well paid professionals on the outside, very high achieving women in their careers. Is that something that comes across?
Absolutely. Feeling like they can, run the boardroom and make the sales, and yet in
Yeah.
intimacy and love, it feels like, why can't I work this out? What's wrong with me type thing. And it often, once again, it comes back to childhood and, our blueprint, how we gave and received love as a child, and how we're unconsciously operating our lives. And until we actually uncover what's going on deep in the deeper layers, that's when we're actually going to show up powerfully in love and attract the love that we desire. And it's, we need to just validate ourselves in those experiences if we are in those sorts, find ourselves in those sorts of relationships, and then come back to a place of, okay, cool, that's how I showed up in this relationship, and that's okay. Let's actually uncover what's going on internally for me to attract that in the first place, or for me to go down this route in the first place, and rewire that so we can shift it for the future or for what's next.
So going from the very competent dancer, the perfectionist, the star student, etc., something must have happened for you to become who you are today. So was there a particular moment or issue or recognition that you thought, no, this is not how intimacy is supposed to be. This is not how my life is supposed to be. I'm going to make a change. Did something happen, or how did the process evolve?
Honestly, so many things. However, I'd say I was in a long-term relationship of 9 years, and I wasn't experiencing the passion, the desire that I really wanted. I found myself constantly in control because I didn't know how to let go. Like, I deeply yearned for a man to lead me, to, like, so that I could just, not wear the pants in the relationship per se, and not feel like I needed to mother him or whatnot, but I didn't know how. And so I got to a point where we were more so best friends than lovers. We were roommates rather than lovers. And so I made that decision to be like, okay, like I can't do this anymore. And it was a really beautiful mutual breakup. And from that sort of sent me on my personal development journey. And so I dived into the mindset work first, and a lot of NLP and Tony Robbins and all like stuff in the mind. But then a couple of years in, I realized that I still had my guard up around love, or I wasn't attracting the type of men that I really wanted. I was attracting men where I was still leading, I was still somewhat in control, and I wanted to shift that. So I started investing in some help around intimacy, and that's when I actually found the nervous system work and the body work. Like, yes, I had been dancing for many years, but I was dancing from my head. So working out and uncovering the subconscious layers and the patterns and why I was attracting the people that I did, that's what then I then attracted some experiences with, some really beautiful men who helped me actually realize that I could ask for what I wanted. That was probably that would be, I'd say, the next shift, because I never felt, I was always the woman that did everything on her own. No way would I ask anybody else for help, because that would mean that I was weak. And I remember the first time that I had connected with a man. I had started working with a male mentor, actually, which was the first time that I've actually felt a sense of safety and security with a masculine presence in my world, because my father died 10 years ago. So that had shifted a lot for me around men. So I started working with a male mentor. This was a couple of years ago. And through him, I'd met another man, and I didn't want to be alone one night after a process we had did, essentially. And I remember asking for what I need. Like, I almost vomited. I was crying. It was so much for my nervous system to actually ask for what I wanted. And I actually had to get my mentor to help me and ask him, because I still couldn't. Like, I was just, it was so horrible for me. And then, eventually, he came over for the night and just held me for the night. And it was the most beautiful experience, non-sexual. And I was just held in, my grief, in everything, and just actually having a male presence with me. And that would be such a catalyst for me in shaping my relationships, and actually asking for what I need, and feeling safer to drop into my feminine energy, to just go, oh, okay, I don't have to do all of this on my own. So that was a long-winded explanation.
That was beautiful. That was a beautiful answer. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was, I'm sure a lot of people resonate, and I'm sure a lot of people listening, but both men and women, to be fair, when they've been in a relationship, perhaps for the 9 years that you were, or it could be 5 years, could be 1 year, could be 20 years, that there's still, I think, that hesitancy or nervousness or fear to ask for what they might want in the bedroom or in the living room, on the kitchen table, wherever. But there's almost that hesitancy. How I think one of the challenges, I think, is that people don't want to be laughed at, depending on what they're going to ask. People don't want to be turned down. People don't want to be looked at askance. So how do you advise people almost to create a safe space to have those conversations about what they might want?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we're afraid that we'll be rejected, right? We don't. Yeah, we
Absolutely.
don't.
Especially, and for somebody that you've been with for a long time, like, see, your relationship. I mean, I've been with my wife for 23 years now, and it's the relationship's obviously evolved over that time. We're not 20 anymore, for goodness sake. We've got 2 kids. We're about to have an empty house when both kids go off to university. So things obviously have changed, but you perhaps have never had that conversation about this thing that we used to do, and I've never really liked it. Or I've been thinking about this thing for the last 5 years, but I've been terrified to say anything. And either worst case, we either blurt it out in the middle of being intimate with someone, which is probably the worst time, or we just hold it in, or we do something about it with somebody else, which was not a good thing, obviously. So yeah, how can we have that conversation?
So firstly, because I mainly work with women, and firstly, I would say for women to go away, because a lot of women don't know what they want. And so actually getting clear on what it is that you want, what you desire more in this relationship, and going away and creating the safety within your nervous system first. So what do I mean by that? Okay, asking myself, what is it that I actually want in this relationship? Let's say, for example, I do want to feel closer, and I want to I don't know, I want to spend more time with this person. And tuning into the body and noticing where she feels it. So this is somatic practices talking about tuning into the body. Where do I actually feel that within my body? And it might be in the chest. Often it's in the chest or the belly, and tuning in and notice the sensations. Notice how if it feels contracted, if it feels open, just noticing it, and then taking a couple of moments to take a breath, to breathe into, to create a deeper capacity. So it does feel, that's how we're creating safety within the body. So breathing that and just asking ourselves, what would feel safe for me to express? And breathing into that. And then from there, once you have actually created the safety within the body, going to your partner. And what I always recommend is starting off with, this feels really vulnerable for me to share, if it is feeling vulnerable, and then expressing it from there. So then it's not blaming, it's not putting it on the other person. It's saying, hey, I feel really vulnerable about asking this, about sharing this, but I would love to explore this in the bedroom. I would love if we could be a little bit closer. How does that land with you? And then creating the conversation from that lens, as opposed to, sometimes we can go into blaming, you don't do this, or I want to do more of this. So always making it about our experience as opposed to them.
I could sense myself breathing into my chest and stomach then, as you were saying that. So I breathe. No, and I totally hear what you're saying, and I think it's just something to get used to things. Like you were saying, you're not necessarily asking for a performative act. You're asking to be helped to feel in a certain way. And I think one of the big things that I come across a lot when I talk to people on the podcast is that I think there's a big issue with our most Western definition of sex. And I think if we could almost replace the word sex with pleasure or intimacy, things would be very different. So I think certainly as a man, I think of sex as penetrative, penis in vagina. That's sex. So when you're younger, people sort of say, "Oh, have you had sex? Have you done it yet?" That's what we're talking about, really. But I think that there are some times where absolutely, I'd love to sort of spend an hour being held by my wife. I'm sure she would feel the same. But there's almost that, oh gosh, okay, we started touching each other. Therefore, he/she wants sex. She wants intercourse. Therefore, that's what we're going to get to. But as you get older, perhaps for women, there's a menopause. For men, my erection is not the same as it was 30 years ago. It's different, and I think sometimes just almost sort of saying, look, I want to be intimate with you, but I don't want to have sex. I think for a lot of men and women, that releases a lot of tension. And who knows what happens while you're being intimate. But generally, if you sort of start off the premise with, okay, I'm not kissing your ear because that's a prelude to sex. I'm kissing your ear because I want to kiss your ear. And do you first of all, do you agree with the sex pleasure narrative? And yeah, what do you think about we don't have to always have penetration to actually have sex or feel intimate with each other?
Absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree. I think intimacy is I actually never really use the word sex in my marketing or anything like that. I think intimacy is a much more beautiful expression, and it's so much more than just sex. It's actually the emotional intimacy. It's the connection that we feel with our lover or our partner. And a big piece of Tantra is it's not about the goal. It's not about the orgasm. It's not about the end result. It's actually about the intimacy that you're creating throughout the experience. And we get to, like, if we can just take the orgasm or the penetration or whatnot off the table, what can we create here, and how much deeper connection and intimacy are we going to create through that experience, which is a much more beautiful experience, in my opinion. Of course, here for the penetration and here for the orgasm and sex, and I think we get to weave both.
And that comes back to what you were saying right at the beginning about being a high achiever, wanting to get things right, and almost this, when you're young, right, getting things right in sex means having an orgasm. That's the goal. That's our sort of performative goal, really. And it's sort of getting in our heads that isn't actually what it's all about. It is about the intimacy. And I do think perhaps there's something with the way society has evolved, and society has done some amazing things for women in the last few decades. Thankfully, there's a huge amount of work to go, a huge amount still to go. But one of the things that has perhaps been said is that women can and should have it all. They should be in control. They should be able to get what they want, etc. But what they want is perhaps what society has determined they want. They want to be in control in a relationship. They want to be on equal standing with a man in the bedroom and wherever else. Whereas actually, what you're saying is sometimes it's nice to be able to give in to our desires and to be in a relationship or at a time in a relationship where you feel that you're not in control of things, that somebody else has taken the lead. Do you think society's perhaps not got it 100% right in those cases?
Absolutely. I'm so passionate about this topic. I'm glad that you brought it up. I believe that a lot of it does come back to feminism, and how feminism has been absolutely incredible for us as women. We now have a voice. Like, it's been amazing. And in terms of our relationships with men, I believe it hasn't done the greatest, because independent women feel like they need to lead. They, as you said, can have it all, can do it all. But yet
Mm.
What I know deep down, for a lot of women, this is generalizing. Most women don't want to lead. Most women don't want to have it all in that way if they have to do it all. They're deeply craving to be led. They're deeply craving to be held, to actually feel safe, to, you know, ask for their desires, to be taken out on a date, to not have to be in control all the time. However, they don't know how. And society has created this identity, per se, that they need to show up as the hyper independent woman. But then they wonder why they're not receiving the intimacy that they deeply crave. They're not, you know, they keep attracting men who are passive or don't lead because they're the one, there's no polarity because they're constantly in control.
Yeah.
And I know men need to provide, like it's in your nature. You need to solve, you need that.
Mm.
And that's where I feel there's quite a big disconnect with our society in relationships at the moment.
Mm. So having said that, and you might not agree with this, but it's still important for your clients and for women to still have or develop boundaries that still feel loving and relational and intimate, whatever. So how do you position it then? So from going from, okay, yes, I appreciate you in controlling a business, but you're saying what you really want is this. Therefore, to be able to get that, you need to attract this kind of person with this kind of demeanor and attitude, etc. But there must still be a need to maintain not control, but maybe it's safety again, but boundaries. How do you balance the two? It feels very, very sort of almost pinpoint balancing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such a dance because we can go from, we can, I guess, pendulum swing from having absolutely no boundaries and being walked all over or whatnot, and then pendulum swinging to the other end of the spectrum, having complete walls up, which will push people away. So that's when discernment really comes in. And how I help women work with this is we're creating safety in the body and clarity in the body. If the boundary feels like it's coming from a we're shifting the language. If it's coming from you never do this or you can't do this, we need to shift it to this actually doesn't work for me, or I care about us and I would love to do it this way. So it's absolutely it's different for each individual, but it's creating the safety within their own nervous system based on their past experiences as well, to what feels right for them within the moment. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And you said before about a lot of women that come to you have perhaps spent years being the the good girl or the reliable one, and for that kind of personality, and it almost sounds trite, but desire can almost feel dangerous. And so I wonder how do you help someone distinguish between almost maybe what's a trauma-driven impulse and something that's genuine, life-affirming, intimate desire?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think trauma-driven impulse feels contracted. I go based off how it feels in the body. So if it probably feels quite contracted, and I need this now. I need to do this because of this reason. However, a desire is more of, does it feel expansive in the body? Is this a want? And can we differentiate between the two? And let's actually lean to, okay, well, we don't want the trauma-driven response. We want to actually lean into what the want is and go off that as opposed to the trauma-driven.
And one of the things I think that, again, back to the sort of society and culture, the whole women have been programmed to have that sort of good girl persona in a way, because there's a lot of things in our culture that loads women with shame about sexuality, the shame about aging, shame about wanting too much, all the different sort of levels of of shame can show up, and how does, and I really like talking to you, because one of the things that I've always struggled with, what I call sort of traditional therapy, is it sort of stops at the neck and then the rest of the body. And I've had therapy for different things, and I've sort of got so far, I thought, well, yeah, but I've got this real visceral feeling in my stomach, and that's not going anywhere. So I wonder how does that shame perhaps show up in the body? How do you help people recognize? I'd recognize that there's no need for shame, or to release it from the tension that they're feeling.
So firstly, we create compassion and validate that shame, that it's there for a reason and it's protecting us. It's always, our body is the most, it's so smart, and it's always going to protect us from danger, from perceived danger. So we validate what's going on in the body. We validate the shame, we validate the feelings first. And then from there, shame often looks like maybe a contraction in the body, or it might be, a soft voice, or like some closed down eyes. And so we lean into that and we explore, okay, what's this feeling here? What's actually coming up? And then what are the stories behind it? So if it's around, say, sexual shame, the shame may be, I was never allowed to express sexually when I was little. So not when I was little, when I was younger. And I was shamed from that from my mum or my dad. So we dive into that story a little bit, and then we leave the story to the side, and then we dive into the feeling in the body, and we allow ourselves to feel it. Whatever emotion comes through, it's welcome. And then that eventually dissipates, because emotions only generally take 90 seconds to actually feel and release out of the body. So then we breathe into it. We hold a hand on the space, and we create, once again, we're creating safety in the body. We breathe through it, and then eventually it dissipates and it dissolves. Because when shame is met with validation and celebration, it dissolves. And then we start to feel better, and then we can move through it.
I love the idea of meeting shame head on with celebration and validation. It makes complete sense. One of the commonalities from people that I've talked to, where people perhaps struggle with their own intimacy or their own desire, is that those people, male or female, I've never had a compelling and enjoyable self-pleasure practice. And I think one of the reasons for that is, I guess, when we're young, I don't know, whatever, 14, 15, whatever, and we're boys, and I'm sure for girls as well, that your body starts feeling in certain ways, and you start to, gosh, this feels nice when I touch myself here, or do this, whatever, and we sort of masturbate. But we tend to do it very quickly. It's just that really is very formative. Right? Oh my God, imagine if somebody came in the door, or the phone rang, or somebody knew what I was doing. How embarrassing that be? And we are all about getting it in as quickly as possible. And a tantra healer said to me that how many people that she talks to said there's so few people who have actually spent 1, 2, 3 hours just touching and exploring their own body, thinking, well, that feels nice on the inside of my wrist, or that feels nice on my ear, or that. Just they never do that. So then she said, well, if you don't know that yourself, and you find it hard to talk to people anyway, how on earth are you going to be able to say to your partner, I really like this, or I'd like to try this, or when I do this, it feels nice, whatever. And I wondered how important self-pleasure practice is to people's own understanding of their desire.
Absolutely. Because just as you've said it, if we don't know what makes us feel good, we can't expect somebody else to. And if we don't communicate that, we can't expect them to either. And a lot of women, we love to think that men can read our minds, or that other people can read our minds.
We really can't.
I've heard that.
Even when women tell us things, we often don't understand.
Exactly.
So reading their mind is very
Absolutely. So it's so important to, as you said, spend a couple, and if you don't have the time, that sort of time, create it and uncover what actually feels good for you, because we can get into these intimate experiences, and especially when we're working out boundaries and whatnot, we're not quite sure like what our boundaries are. So it's really so important to uncover what our desires are first and foremost, because we don't know, we can't expect another person to make us feel good and then start resenting them if we walk away feeling unhappy, or like I didn't orgasm, he didn't make me do this, etc., etc. Well, no, we communicate it? Do we actually know what feels good for us in the first place?
As one thing I found interesting is if I talk to people, perhaps they're in the as they define it, the BDSM or kink community. Because one of the things that they do very well is typically communicate. Then, and I've talked to somebody that's in the community. So we spend as much time talking about what we're going to do as we do doing it. We have safe words. We have yes, no, maybes. We talk about boundaries. We talk about all these things. Whereas very often in what might be determined as vanilla sex, we don't talk about any of it. We just
do it.
Just
Yeah.
do it, and that's it. And you sort of, and some people have a hang up about when they hear the word kink or BDSM, whatever. But I think there is something we can take from their communication. And a lot of times they have written contracts, and certainly verbal contracts, where I will do this, won't do this. Yes, I'll try that. But if I do this, then it's a no. If I say this, then stop immediately. All those things. Whereas we in vanilla sex, we tend to, we'll do something. We might not enjoy it, but okay, I'll probably won't do that again. But then that's it. We've not had a debrief or not to make it sound like of course, like a HR interview, but we don't. What did you think? Like the next day over coffee or cake or whatever. We haven't done that before. How did you feel about that? Did that make you feel good? I thought maybe we could try this next time. Well, we don't. Yeah, it almost feels that there are things we could learn from other people that are perhaps more in tune with desire and intimacy.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, that stems from feeling shame about speaking about it, speaking about our desires, speaking about what we didn't like, or, not wanting to hurt the other person's feelings. But we need to be open and communicative about these things, because if we want to especially if we're in a partnership with someone and you want to provide for the other person, you want to feel pleasure with this person, it's so important to communicate this. I'm absolutely not perfect at this. I'm still on my journey. I'm always going to be learning and evolving. And I know the times that I do really communicate, that's when the magic happens.
When were you first able to say that you really loved yourself?
Ooh, great question. I'd say in the last couple of years, I've really developed a much deeper relationship with myself, in loving myself. I'll be completely honest, do I love myself all the time, 100% of the time? No. However, I'd say probably once I really started doing this body work, so that would be maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, which, I'm 36 now. So I've spent a lot of my life not loving myself and not loving the body that I'm in. It's been a very big journey.
Oh, I'm glad you have found that self-love. It's important, isn't it, to feel that way.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I think has maybe challenged us, this is men and women, maybe women in particular, I think, is certainly when I was younger, pornography was something very different than it is today. And it was maybe a magazine you found under your older brother's bed, and that was, oh my God, that was the height of excitement. There's naked women, oh my God, can you imagine that? Or even topless women, oh my goodness. Whereas now, that ain't pornography now. And I wonder whether what we see on screen, and I'm not against pornography, I'm not saying that, but because I've talked to some wonderful feminist porn directors and holistic porn directors that have created some beautiful, intimate, almost art house pornography. But what I'm talking about is almost as I would define it almost as the fast food of pornography,
Mm.
like the clip sites and things that we see something for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. There's no start, there's no finish. Well, there is a finish, but there's no sort of long story into it. It's just this thing happens. Oh my god! And as a young person, you perhaps watch that and think, oh my goodness, either all women like this, or nobody has any hair for start below their
Yeah.
neck, and I my penis isn't that big. I go on orgasm sort of 5 times in 5 minutes. Gosh, is that wrong? Gosh, all women like, and there's been quite a lot of media and press over here about, and my friends that had experienced it, an increase in choking and asphyxiation and things, because we see it in pornography. I think, well, all people like that. Why on earth would somebody want? Maybe they do, but don't just suddenly start choking somebody. And we've had, sadly, some very tragic cases over here where that's happened to the extreme. And I wondered how much influence you think people film from. Sorry, how much people feel from almost what they feel they're being guided towards, and not necessarily just in pornography, but in media in general, and the sort of sexualization of people. That's a big question, sorry, but I just interested to know how that plays on people's feelings about themselves and their adequacies or inadequacies.
Absolutely. I think it plays a huge role in our self-worth. It's, if I speak from a perspective from women and looking at pornography, thinking that I should feel safe. There's something wrong with me because I can't orgasm 5 times in a row. I can't orgasm straight away like she does. I don't have big fake boobs like her. My body doesn't look like her. He's not going to like me
Mm.
because I don't look like that. I don't look like, the AI models online. Like, I don't look
Yeah,
like that. Like,
yeah.
so many women have so much shame around their bodies and, can't have sex with the lights on. And it plays such a role in, what I believe we, whether unconsciously or consciously, expect of ourselves and think that men expect of us as well. And I think that it's terrible. And it's why these sorts of conversations and the work that we're doing to show women that it's not just pornography. It's actually real humans.
Mm.
It's about intimacy. It's about, real bodies. And you need to feel safe to actually orgasm. You need to feel safe within your own body to actually experience a depth of intimacy. It's not just fast and hard sex and you're going to be done and happy. Hmm.
How does the dynamic change when you're talking to individuals versus doing group work with women?
In what regard do you mean?
So do you find that the one-on-ones are very different? Do you find that if you work with a group of women, then they almost, their energy helps one another? I wonder which you find harder, the group or individual work.
I wouldn't say that either is hard.
Harder for them.
Yeah, no, I think that one on one, women tend to feel safer to actually express more, so we can go a lot deeper. However,
Yeah.
women in groups, I actually just ran an event on the weekend, and
Mhm.
because they all could feel that everybody was on the same page, they all could drop deeper. So I think it's just different in a sense of when women are in groups, they can connect with each other and recognize that they're not alone. However, when they're in one-on-one with me, we can go a lot deeper into obviously the nervous system work, and they share a lot
Mm.
more. I guess it might be a little more, whilst it's still to a level of depth in group work, it's still
Mhm.
like slightly surface level because there's still elements of
Yeah.
shame because they, can I actually release this? Can I go there? Whereas one on one, we create the safety over time, or sometimes in the first session, and yeah, a lot more probably feels safer to release.
Mm. So if somebody's thinking about coming to see you, and but perhaps has a thought that, oh, maybe I just left this too late. My body's not the same as it was when I was 20. My libido's weird. I'm not sure that deep intimacy is really for you. No, I won't. I won't go and see her. What I want that person to go and see you. So how would you? What words would you use to encourage them that it's not too late and your body's changed to be an amazing, wonderful body that somebody would love and desire incredibly, and your libido is just where it needs to be? How would you encourage that potential client to come and see you?
This is really common. I hear it all the time, often in my work. And some people don't come to me because they think that they're too old. However, I have women from 25 to 60 in my rooms and coaching. And what I would say is oftentimes, they think that they are too old because it was a part of them that was alive when they were younger, or perhaps they never connected to that part of themselves, so it feels shameful, it feels awkward, it feels like, yeah, no, my time has passed. And what I say to that is, we validate it first, of course, because it's okay to feel that way. And libido doesn't necessarily go away. It's more so that there's burnout, hormones, menopause, as you said, so many different experiences that these women have had, such long, beautiful lives, and it just doesn't feel safe. So we dive into, how can I create safety in my body? It always, I know I harp on about this like the whole podcast, but it's, how do I feel safe within my own body? How can my libido feel safe to express again? And we dive deeper from there. And I would say you are absolutely never too old. Never, ever, ever.
I mean, I think the importance of feeling safe in your own body. Yeah, if that's the only message people take away, that has to be the key message, doesn't it? Because if you feel safe and secure, you're going to feel much, much more open to feelings, to experiences, to emotions. But if you're feeling unsafe, or you're almost trying to persuade your body to fake feeling safe, you're going to tighten up and feel uncomfortable and feel awkward, all of those things. So I completely echo what you said about feeling safe. That has to be ultimately what it's completely about, because that is literally, without that, there's no foundation for anything else.
Absolutely. And when we don't feel safe, that's when women experience horrific UTIs. That's when they say no. They say yes when they actually mean no. And then we get all sorts of dis-ease and trauma created within the body, because the body goes, hey, you're not listening to me. So I'm now going to protect myself with this form of disease, or this form of whatever it is, so that you actually listen to me. And we close up, we clench, and then the stories start to create of, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with me, I can't do this anymore, why can't I orgasm, whatever the story is. It's like, okay, no, how do we create safety within the body, and what is our yes and no? And oftentimes it can be really frustrating, but it's a very slow process. And there's a reason for that, because the body is taking its time. It's slowly opening to what feels safe. And then when you actually get to that point, that's when you feel the melty, gooey mush, like juicy, wild, and alive. That's when the yumminess, actually, you get to experience the yumminess. And that's what I'm all about. That's what I'm here for.
And I think, yeah. And I keep saying, yeah, I totally agree. Of course I do. I think one of the things that people perhaps sort of struggle with is that, whilst we have a memory, so we remember things, but our body has a memory as well. Our body, there's a really good book by Gabor Mate called "The Body Keeps a
Yes.
Score," and it's basically saying that your body remembers all of these things. So when you've had a not so good experience where something's happened and it's been fairly traumatic, your body holds on to all those things. So I think, yeah, until you can get to a place where you almost release those and your body's in a position of safety again, it's hard because we can't wipe away our memories in the same way, but we can overcome them with therapy and different things. But the same with our body, that our body is keeping the score. It's remembering all these things. Oh, when that happened last time, I did this. So therefore, when it happens again, I'll do the same thing. You're not starting from sort of fresh every time, but if you can almost embed that safety, embrace that feeling and that emotion, then you go on to doing something quite different, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's why people can stay in talk therapy for years, 15, 20 years, and not move forward because the body isn't on board yet. But the moment you actually combine or you integrate the two, it's never about letting go of the mind, because the mind is important. It's creating safety. That's essentially just always what it's doing. It thinks it's creating safety for us using words and stories, whereas we need to integrate that and dance with our body as well. Because as you said, the body holds on to trauma, the body holds on to everything, it keeps the score. So we need to release it from the body as well.
Back to the dance again.
Always dancing.
One of the it's wonderful that you get to help so many people and they come and talk to you and they share their innermost thoughts and feelings with you, which is must be incredibly inspiring in many ways. But people aren't generally coming to you to say how wonderful everything is. So I wondered, how do you almost protect and nourish your own mental well-being and physical, obviously, but how do you protect yourself, firstly so you can be the person you desire to be, but also so you're not carrying somebody's trauma with you and you can show it for the next person.
So when I first started, I found it very difficult because I'm very much an empathetic person and I want to help everyone, and felt like I was taking a lot of it on. But what I learned was that, and oftentimes the women that come to me are my past projections. So I've experienced what they've already experienced. So it can escalate things within me. However, what I found is if I hadn't worked through it within myself, then that's when it would activate me. But most of the time now, I'm totally fine. So how do I nourish myself? I guess I energetically disconnect from the experience and I protect myself. I'm a little bit woo-woo and all that kind of stuff, but I protect myself energetically. And I continue to focus on, my practices of healthy eating and meditation and my own body, and I have my mentors as well. Not that I bring their stuff into my mentorship, but I am constantly working through my stuff so that I can show up for them powerfully. And I've found that the longer that I've done this work now, I'm able to completely disconnect. Sometimes, of course, like things do really activate me because I am so I've got so much passion in me that I want to help everyone and make sure that everybody's okay. And I guess I don't let it affect me anymore. And also the types of clients that I attract now compared to who I used to are quite different. They take a lot of self-responsibility, and so it's a very different dynamic as well that I have now. So, yeah.
Do you have a deep connection with nature?
Absolutely. I love nature. Yeah, I should have said that, of course. Yeah, I love the beach.
No. I just had that feeling, especially being in a beautiful part of the world that you're in, and I find exactly the same. So even if I get to go out in the morning for my dog for an hour and just walk with them in the local woods or near the water, it's just a very different feeling. And I think one of the things that hopefully we're getting better at this. I think we've always thought of, we have humans and then we have nature, almost as two separate things. And I think the more and more I think about, no, we're just a very small part of nature. I think if you can, almost, let yourself be absorbed by nature. It's a woo-woo thing to hug a tree, whatever, but it feels pretty nice.
Absolutely.
And to go and listen to the waves or just watching water, how incredible is that? It just, walking on grass in your bare feet, how amazing is that? Or walking on the beach, just something so connected and special about it. I really think that's a really good place to center yourself again, is being in nature in whatever way works for somebody.
Absolutely.
Sorry, I'm asking an
No,
answer.
no, that's it. I would say the exact same thing. I think that's perfect. It's very, for myself, it's very grounding. We,
And what do you see for the future, both for your practice and personally? What does you think the future holds for Lauren?
for the world, for me, for the practice.
Yeah, let's start with maybe the world's too big. Start with the practice, and then for you personally.
For my practice, I am traveling, but I'm wanting to speak more and to have more opportunities to get in front of more people and bigger groups to, spread this message to help women feel safe in their bodies so they can drop their guard down and experience the intimacy that they crave. And that's definitely where I'm wanting to head, more speaking, more just always here for more clients and helping more women. And personally, I'm here to follow my own aliveness. That's my word for this year, and traveling is a part of that. So continuing to follow what makes me feel alive, and as a result of that, finding a man or attracting a man, and that's what feels most alive at the moment. Just helping more humans.
That's a pretty good place to be. Now, I was going to ask that. Do you? This isn't meant to sound rude, but do you live what you teach? Do you do things that you have to do, I guess? But when you're in a relationship with somebody, when you're looking for somebody, when you're seeking desire, do you fall back on all the teachings and all the things you've learned to get what you want for yourself?
Absolutely. And it's a real test for myself, because in those moments where I could go back to those past patterns, I think, oh no, hang on, how would I teach my clients to do this? And I'm absolutely not perfect. I'm not here to say that I do it 24/7. There's definitely moments where I think, oh, I could have done that differently. Okay, I need to come back. And I'm constantly learning, because the way I teach is through lived experience. It's always through my lessons, and that's how I teach, through my experience. So I thoroughly believe that we need to preach what we teach, and that's what I live by. And I'm always a work in progress. I'm always learning. It's a journey. It's like, okay, no, hang on, I said this, I need to do this.
And that's a perfect place to end. Thank you so much for your time. You've been very generous, and you've really said some really impactful things that I think a lot of people will resonate with. There's a lot of links that I'll put into the notes so people can find you and learn more about you. You have a really cool website. It's very direct in lots of ways. I think it doesn't mess about. It sort of tells you what you're going to get. It explains the different ways to contact you, different ways to work with you. And I think with your traveling, maybe even people in Europe will get a chance to sort of spend some time with you. Who knows? But no, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it.
It's been such an honor to be here. Thank you so much. It's been great.